Good day, students. I still remain your regular teacher, Mr. Daniel Ikweme. I'm taking you on biology, and today we want to consider the topic, regulations of internal environment. The question is, what is your internal environment? What does it look like? When we talk of internal environment, we are looking at what happens inside your body, things you cannot see. There are a lot of things that occur in the system which you cannot see. That is your internal environment. And those things that happen needs to be regulated. That leads us to the topic, regulation of the internal environment. And you cannot study the internal environment without looking at this very important technology, homeostasis. What is homeostasis? Homeostasis happens to be the process of maintaining a constant internal environment. When you maintain, the process of maintaining a fairly constant temperature in the internal environment. So when this system inside is constantly maintained, that means there is a temperature that needs to be for those organs to begin to flow. I want you to take, for instance, if your body is too cold beyond the body temperature, you discover that your blood begins to clot. And when the blood clots, what happens? It can lead to death. Your systems inside, like the kidney, the liver, the heart, they need a particular temperature in order to function well. And when this environment is not conducive, it might result to something very devastating. So that is why we have to study the internal environment. Now, there are various fluids in the body that help to regulate this internal environment. The fluids that help, fluids are liquids. These fluids include blood, lymph, and tissue fluids. So these are the various fluids that are deposited in the internal environment that assist in the regulation of the body temperature. We know blood is very vital. We did that in our second term, that blood is tissue in fluid form. And this blood is divided into two major components. We have the plasma and we have the corpuscles. The corpuscles are the red, the white, and the platelet, while the other one is the plasma. So blood, you can see, is very vital in the body. When the body does not have blood, it results into a medical case. We have the lymph nodes. The lymph help in coordination. Later we'll be looking at nervous coordination, transferring of impulses from one area to the other. For example, you are given a pinch on the leg. Something has to happen. Nerve cells have to carry that information to the brain. The brain will interpret it and send it back to that area where the action was taken in a twinkle of an eye. So those things are transported by the lymph, and we have the fluid, the tissue fluid. So all this help to keep the body temperature at a constant and regular form. Now, there are some organs that are needed for homeostasis to be effective. Organs for temperature regulations. Or we say organs necessary for homeostasis. These are organs that help to regulate the internal environment and keep them at constant temperature. The first on the list is the kidney. We have the kidney, the liver, the skin, the ductless, and the brain. So we are going to take these organs bit by bit. We take them in details so that you know where they are, you know their functions, and you know what they can do. Let's take the first one, being the kidney. Let us consider the structure of the mammalian kidney. The mammalian kidney is located at the lower abdomen. It's located at the lower abdomen. It lies in between the vertebral column. The vertebral column is the backbone that runs from the neck down to the tail region. Then at the lower abdomen, you have the kidney, located on both sides. The kidney is a bean-shaped structure. You can see the diagram. It looks like a bean. It's a bean-shaped structure that is reddish-brown. It's reddish-brown in color. And it lies in between the vertebral column. Now let's look at the anatomy of the kidney. When this kidney is divided from up to bottom, what we call the transverse, now you discover that the kidney is made up of three parts. We have the first part known as the cortex. The kidney is divided into the cortex, being the outer portion or the outer part. Then we have the medulla. The medulla is the inner part of the kidney. And lastly, we have a part called the pelvis. Now, the cortex covers the entire kidney and makes it solidify because of the texture. And this cortex links the kidney through a tube. This outer part is the cortex. This is the cortex. And we have the medulla. So the cortex links the kidney through a tube into a bag-like structure. That bag-like structure is what we call the bladder. And the tube I'm talking about is the ureter. So from the cortex, the kidney produces a tube that links to the bladder. Remember, I'm going to let you know that the kidney is one of the main excretory structure in the human body. Now let's look at a little structure, a sketch of the kidney when it is transversely dissected. You see from the diagram that this is the outer part I was trying to illustrate that is called the cortex. Immediately after the cortex, we have the inner part called the medulla, and the medulla leads to a funnel-shaped structure. This is the funnel-shaped structure I was talking of. This structure is called the ureter. And this ureter links to a pouch-like structure known as the bladder. That is where urine is stored. Now, on the top of the kidney, you see two tubes that comes out. One carries blood into the kidney, while the other takes blood out of the kidney. Now, the one that takes blood into the kidney is called the renal vein. So blood enters the kidney, and now let me explain what happens. When blood circulates into the body, it is being carried to the liver. From the liver, it sends to the kidney. And what the kidney does is to filter this blood of impurity. So when impurities are filtered, the waste products will now be sent to this renal artery. Will be sent to the ureter from the renal artery to the ureter. When it gets to the ureter, it will now go to the bladder, where it comes out of the exterior. Through the bladder. Then the filtered blood will now enter through this part and go out for circulation. Now the kidney has various functions, which I'm going to tell us now. Before we get to the function, each of these kidney is made up of tiny organelles, kidney. The kidney is made up of millions of units, and those units are called nephron. You can call them nephron, or you call them urinary tubule. Now, this urinary tubule are the structural and functional units of the kidney. That the kidney is able to filter the blood of impurity and carry out excretory function is because of the nephron. Now, this nephron is divided into three major parts. We have the glomerulus, we have the Bowman's capsule, and the convoluted tubule. These three sections makes up the nephron. Now, how does the nephron look? The nephron starts with a cup-shaped structure. Please, let's look at the other way. The nephron, this is an example of a nephron. It starts with a cup-shaped structure, and this structure is known as the Bowman's capsule. It is named after the scientist that discovered this capsule. So this capsule is located in the cortex. Don't forget that the cortex is the outer part of the kidney. So from the cortex, it forms a short coil tube. You can see the coil tube. This short coil tube is called the proximal convoluted tubule. So it starts with the cup-shaped structure known as the Bowman capsule and forms a short coil tube known as the proximal convoluted tubule. This tubule enters into the medulla. Do not forget that the outer part of the kidney is the cortex, then the inner part is the medulla. So the tube enters into the medulla and straightens right deep. So it straightens to form a U shape. This U shape formed is called Ellen's loop. The Ellen's loop enters the medulla and comes out again and straightens out to the cortex to form another short coil tube. The second short coil tube is what we call the distal convoluted tubule. So this tubule straightens out again to form networks of capillaries. So it is in this network of capillaries that we have the glomerula, where filtration is made possible in the kidney. So do not forget that the urinary tubule is the structural function of the kidney. Now, this kidney has some vital importance to the body. Before we get to the disease, let us look at the importance or functions of the kidney. Importance of the kidney. The kidney carries out 3 or 4 important functions. One is osmoregulation. This is a process where the kidney regulates the water content of the body. In this form, when the body is having too much water, especially in the blood, the kidney secretes radicals that reduce the excess. That is why when you drink too much of water, you discover that your urination rate will be high. Because at that point, the blood contains so much water and the kidney will remove it. That process is called osmoregulation. The kidney functions again in maintains acid-base balance. So the kidney has a way of maintaining acid-base balance in the blood. When the blood is too acidic, the kidney will excrete acidic radicals. When it's too basic, it will excrete alkaline radicals to balance up the equation. It controls the concentration of salts. The kidney controls the concentration of salt in the body. Now, when you take too much salt in your body, the kidney will help to reduce it. by secreting some radicals. And finally, the kidney excretes urea. Urea is a very poisonous substance that is formed from ammonium compound. When these compounds are accumulated in the body, it becomes dangerous. So the kidney excrete them out of the body. Now let's look at what happens when the kidney is no longer functioning well. That leads us to the diseases of the kidney. The first disease on the board is called glomerular nephritis. This disease mostly affects children and adolescents. It is as a result of a bacterial infection, a particular strand of bacteria known as streptococcal. When streptococcal affects the kidney, it causes the kidney to be inflamed and it will lead to porosity. When the kidney becomes porous, there will be leakage of blood and protein in the urine. And when this leakage occurs, it might cause blockage of the kidney tubules. And when the kidney tubules is blocked, it might result to a kidney failure. So glomerular nephritis can result into a kidney failure. The next disease we want to consider is the kidney stones. We have stones. I don't want you to think there are these geological stones. No, the stones we are talking about here are crystals of mineral salts. So what causes kidney stones? There are three things that result into kidney stones. The first one is when the water content of the body is low. When water is low, low water intake. Some of us eat without drinking water. When you do that, you are destroying the kidney. So drink enough water. When the water intake is low, it might result to kidney stone. Kidney stones. The kidney stone is a disease, geographical stones. Here we are looking at crystals of mineral salts. So now, what causes kidney stones? When the intake of water in your food is very low, when you don't drink enough water after meal, it might. Some of us, we cannot eat without adding. Is when the urine is abnormally acidic. When the urine is abnormally, those are the three causes of kidney stones. When the water in kidney stones. Now let's go to the third one. We have diuresis. Diuresis is a condition. It's a condition where you drink a little water, and when you are urinating,